Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Digest, a government information agency program that keeps you informed on what the administration has been doing that will create a better environment for citizens. I'm your host, Ursula Ramdale. Thank you for joining us. In this week's presentation for the period November 9 to 15, security measures are in place for the festive season. New species of flora and fauna discovered in the Rupununi, and Region 5 school moves up in ranking. The Guyana Police Force will be employing increased patrols using marked and unmarked vehicles, uniformed in plainclothes ranks, along with strategically placed manned booths as part of security measures for the upcoming Christmas season.
The Christmas season, and there are a lot of expectations. Increasing commercial activities in the cities and its environs, and increasing vehicular traffic, both and pedestrians also. Therefore, we have our work cut out. And in a division, these are our intentions. We intend to minimize the criminal activities, traffic congestion, and to provide a safe and secure environment for visitors, citizens, and shoppers as well.
Georgetown is to be divided into 5 sectors, each manned by an assistant superintendent of police or a cadet officer and support ranks. The CID and the intelligence section will conduct special operations around the banks, hotels, and hotspots in the city, whilst the anti-crime patrol will concentrate on the Upper East Bank, the Georgetown prisons, and the Stabroek and border markets.
It doesn't really in the number 1 subdivision. However, in the number 2, 3, and 4 subdivisions, the commanders, the subdivisional officers will ensure that there are other patrols coming out of the stations in these areas, is on the outskirts of Georgetown, and to ensure that the police stay hotspots. And then the officer in charge of Timeri District, number 4 subdivision, he will acquire an itinerary of the late night flights, briefest patrols that will monitor the vehicles and persons coming in. Because you know that these guys target the late night flights and try to rob people when they come down to Georgetown.
Foot patrols will be done daily around the city, and mobile patrols of residential areas by the community policing groups under the supervision of the police. Traffic patrol will also be conducted on a 24-hour basis. The police force Christmas agreements will span from November 15, 2013 to January 2014.
The Agriculture Ministry has heightened its preparations for the upcoming rainy season in an effort to alleviate the impact of possible flooding.
The drainage infrastructure remains a priority for the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority under the Ministry of Agriculture. As the year-end rainy season commences, several measures have been put into effect to alleviate the possible effects of flooding, particularly in coastal areas.
At Land of Canaan, water is being released so that we could keep the level in the East Demerara Water Conservancy at a low level to allow us to accommodate increasing levels of water during the rainy season.
Regional Democratic Councils and Neighborhood Democratic Councils are also being engaged by the Agriculture Ministry.
We are urging them to ensure that they are looking at the conditions in these secondary and tertiary structures. We are now going to be following up with regional chairmen, with heads of Water Users Association, with mayors, with NDC chairs, to ensure that they give us a status report, so that's the other thing that we have done at NDIA. There's somebody who is dedicated to this task of, through telephone contacts and through contacts with our local engineers, to know what the conditions are.
Barring excessive rainfall, the primary coastal drainage facilities are prepared to relieve flooding.
As the deadline for the much-anticipated East Demerara Water Conservancy Northern Relief Channel at Hope-4 approaches, Minister of Agriculture Dr. Leslie Ramsamy is set to meet with the project contractors to restate their contractual obligations, especially as it nears the December 2013 deadline.
The head regulator is on pace to be completed in accordance with the new deadline of December, end of December. The canal digging itself is almost completed as we speak. The parts that are not completed are dependent on the completion of the other structures. The bridge is on pace to be completed in December. Also, the seaside sluice, this is the one by the sea, Atlantic Coast sluice, is also due to be finished in December. Notice I use different words in this instance.
Construction of the Northern Relief Project began in February 2011 with an estimated 18 months for completion. The August 2013 deadline was later pushed to August 31 and then again to December 31st. Minister Ramsamy is holding firm to the December 31 deadline, and any of the contractors that exceeds it will incur liability.
I have grave concern about the completion of the 8-door sluice by the seaside. I am not comfortable that progress is being made. We had significant progress made in September and in October. Unfortunately, many opportunity days in November have been lost, and that creates concern for me, and therefore I'm meeting the contractors to once again reiterate the government's position that we will not tolerate any nonchalant attitude, and we will not tolerate the contractors going into 2014.
The Northern Relief Project will bring relief to the agriculture lands in the Mahaica-Maikoni areas.
The South Rupununi has been branded a haven for biodiversity. Several new species of fauna and flora were discovered by the Biodiversity Assessment Team through a World Wildlife Fund expedition.
After spending 2 weeks exploring the Cosad Mountain and Parabara in the South Rupununi district, the Biodiversity Assessment Team has found that the area has a diversity of high species and natural resources that are important for local communities. The aim of this team was to gather new biological and natural resource data that could be used by government agencies, universities, NGOs, local communities, and businesses to make informed decisions about the sustainable use, management, and conservation of the Rupununi. This is because although the southern Rupununi has reported high diversity and unique species compositions, biological data was lacking. The assessment team comprised national and international scientists who have expertise in the identification of plants, birds, reptiles, mammals, amphibians, insects, and fish, along with water quality and community resource use. This international collaboration has also provided training for Guyanese biologists and parataxonomists from the South Rupununi communities, along with students from the University of Guyana. The team's biggest achievement for this World Wildlife Fund WWF undertaking has been the documenting and mapping of approximately 1,000 species of fauna and flora, including a variety of new species.
There's more of the Weekly Digest after these messages.
With the Amaila Falls Hydropower Project, all consumers will benefit from cheap and reliable electricity. In fact, reduction in consumer tariffs will be at least 20% in 2017 and considerably more in the years ahead. This project will save residential, commercial, and industrial entities approximately $3.5 billion over a period of 20 years. At present, it costs about 25 cents per kilowatt hour to generate electricity using heavy fuel oil and about 30 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour using diesel. With Amaila, Guyana will save a dramatic 20 to 25% on its fuel importation bill, or about $90 million. Investors' confidence in Guyana will increase, and the manufacturing and services sector will be significantly boosted. In the climate change arena, Guyana has already taken on a leadership role with its low-carbon development strategy, and with this Amaila project, the country could also become a leader globally for renewable power. This project will add 6 percentage points to real GDP growth during the construction phase alone. The total public debt to Guyana for this project is zero. Cheap energy is vital to the industrialization of Guyana. Thousands of jobs would be created due to industrialization. After 20 years, the hydropower facility will be 100% owned by Guyanese, and it is expected to last 100 years.
Millions of taxpayers' dollars have already been spent on the Amalia Falls hydropower project, which is now in its final stages of achieving financial closure. However, the APNU and the AFC teamed up in Parliament to kill the project without any valid reason, and in so doing taking cheap electricity out of the reach of Guyanese. Frustrating a project of this magnitude at this stage is tantamount to strangling the country's development and putting at stake the future of every man, woman and child. Guyana needs the Amalia Falls hydropower project because all consumers will benefit from cheap and reliable electricity. Consumers will save approximately $3.5 billion over a period of 20 years. Guyana will save $90 million on fuel importation, and investors' confidence in Guyana will increase. More jobs will be available. All Guyanese need to come on board now. Reduction in consumer tariffs will be at least 20%.
Thanks for staying with us on the Weekly Digest. Government has spent $45 million on improving the Rossignol Secondary School to an A-list school to ensure a higher level of education for Region 5 students.
The institution was commissioned by Education Minister Priya Manichan on November 12th.
The government, the People's Progressive Party, Civic, as a party, a political party, and as a political party that was elected into office to govern or run the country, understand fully that there are no shortcuts to alleviating poverty in Guyana. They understand, we understand in the government that education is singularly the most important sector in our country. And so it is part of our macro plan. As we build roads, as we build hospitals, as we look to build a Mila, as we look to build big hotels that will bring in people, that will bring in money, we ensure that none of that is lost, or none of that encompasses and swallows up the education sector.
The money was expended on textbooks, chemical and lab equipment, physical rehabilitation, computers and furniture to bring it to A-list level.
10% of our schools, of the schools we had, and we had a much smaller number, but of the schools we had, only 10% of them were in a state like this that could be housing our children. We now have a much higher percentage. 80% of our secondary age children are now in schools. We have work to do. We have to make sure that it's 100% of our children have access to primary schools. But right now it's 80%, the highest that we have ever been in the country.
The school, which was offering 19 subjects, now has added 6 others. To bring Rossignol Secondary to an A-list school, a block was built to house 2 science labs, and the old labs were converted into 5 classrooms. Major renovation work was done while 21 computers were installed for information technology and materials and equipment bought for home economics.
Amerindian communities continue to receive assistance in many forms from government. One of the most important is the provision of vehicles for villagers' use and for agricultural purposes.
Minister of Amerindian Affairs Pauline Sukai, along with liaison officer Yvonne Pearson, recently visited St. Cuthbert's Mission Region 4, where the keys of a new Hilux pickup was handed over to Tushau Luke Simon. The vehicle was obtained at the cost of $5 million and will be used in case of emergencies, for agriculture purposes, the community's tourism drive, and to transport pensioners to uplift their pensions, among others. The residents disclosed that the vehicle came at a time when the community was at its peak of development.
With this new facility, we can be able to bring in tourists at a short notice to this community. At the same time, too, this would help to actually be used as an income-generating instrument to the community. Other areas, too, where this vehicle would help us is on forestry runs. because those areas before was vulnerable to people, let us say, stealing from our areas or going onto state lands. So we can be able to better monitor our borders.
There's a need for such a transport here, such a vehicle. And I see it paying great dividends. And I'm happy that the minister, very, very happy, the minister outlined it in very, very simple, practical terms, so that the residents can be aware of how this thing is going to be used, how it's going to be managed.
Meanwhile, during the recent National Tushaus Conference, Manwarian Village, which is located in Region 1, received a tractor and trailer, while Mountain Foot Region 8 received one ATV and radio set, and Santa Aratak Region 3 received one bush cutter, and Siparuta Region 6 received one chainsaw, all of which will be used for the benefit of the respective community.
Meanwhile, the village of Oriala, Siparuta, continues to grow and develop with government's assistance, and this has been attested to by its Tushau.
The ongoing developmental program for indigenous communities by government has resulted in the transformation of the lives of thousands of residents in many interior locations. Among them is the community of Oriala, Siparuta.
Our first CDP that has been approved at Siparuta, it is the furniture station. And that is our CDP which we had submitted to the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs because we are a logging community. And we found out that we sell our wrong logs at very cheap prices. But if we can use it as a finished product, we can gain more. So that is why we submitted our CDP for a furniture station. Right now, presently, we are 95% completed. It is 95% completed. We have also have the rehabilitation of our health center, both in Oriala and Siparuta. And we have had a medic, which we have not had before. We have had a medic, we have had trained nurses.
Other projects have also benefited the community's residents.
We had steady erosion from the river that is eroding in our community. And the Region 6 department has done a revetment project in the cost of about $8.9 million. And that has helped the development or to stop the erosion in the community. Recently, we had a grant, 2 grants, one for Oriala, one for Siparuta, from the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, that is to upgrade the sports ground. We understand that we need our sports ground because it is an important asset to the community and it can be beneficial to all residents in the community, including both old and young. You know, so we feel that it is a great improvement and that the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, which we have been working along together, has given us what actually we need at this time. They have even promised to give us more projects as we finish this project and it is beneficial to the community. The Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports will also give us more next year.
The push by government to invest in the development of all indigenous communities is in recognition of the need to ensure that all Guyanese, regardless of where they live locally, have an equal opportunity to better their lives socially and economically.
Stay tuned. There's more of the Weekly Digest after the break.
Guyana needs the Amalia Falls Hydropower project because all consumers will benefit from cheap and reliable electricity. Consumers will save approximately $3.5 billion over a period of 20 years. Ghana will save $90 million on fuel importation, and investors' confidence in Guyana will increase. More jobs will be available. All Guyanese need to come on board now. Reduction in consumer tariffs will be at least 20%.
With the Amaila Falls Hydropower project, all consumers will benefit from cheap and reliable electricity. In fact, reduction in consumer tariffs will be at least 20% in 2017 and considerably more in the years ahead. This project will save residential, commercial and industrial entities approximately $3.5 billion over a period of 20 years. At present, it costs about 25 cents per kilowatt hour to generate electricity using heavy fuel oil and about 30 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour using diesel. With a miler, Guyana will save a dramatic 20 to 25% on its fuel importation bill, or about 90 million US dollars. Investors' confidence in Guyana will increase, and the manufacturing and services sector will be significantly boosted. In the climate change arena, Guyana has already taken on a leadership role with its low-carbon development strategy, and with this Amaila project, the country could also become a leader globally for renewable power. This project will add 6 percentage points to real GDP growth during the construction phase alone. The total public debt to Guyana for this project is zero. Cheap energy is vital to the industrialization of Guyana. Thousands of jobs would be created due to industrialization. After 20 years, the hydropower facility will be 100% owned by Guyanese, and it is expected to last 100 years.
Millions of taxpayers' dollars have already been spent on the Amaila Falls hydropower project, which is now in its final stages of achieving financial closure. However, the APNU and the AFC teamed up in Parliament to kill the project without any valid reason, and in so doing taking cheap electricity out of the reach of Guyanese. Frustrating a project of this magnitude at this stage is tantamount to strangling the country's development and putting at stake the future of every man, woman and child.
The Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Amendment Bill was defeated in the National Assembly by a majority opposition vote, despite pleas from the government benches for responsible action during the arguments, and despite exhaustive efforts over 6 months through 17 meetings to discuss the amendment to the bill. The failure to pass this legislation has far-reaching consequences. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh observed that the opposition's actions amounted to economic sabotage, which would affect all the people of Guyana.
CFATF said on the 29th of May of this year, Guyana will, not might, not is likely to, Guyana will face sanctions if this legislation is not enacted by November. And this opposition is still willing, the APNU and the AFC acting in cahoots with each other, still willing to trifle, to gamble, to gamble with the economic fortunes of our country, economic well-being of our country.
Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlal explained that the draft report already prepared by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force will constitute the evaluation report of Guyana at the end of the November 18 meeting, when Guyana turns up without the bill.
The statement has already been crafted and it is part of a draft report. That draft report will be adopted as a final report. So the statement that will be issued in respect of Guyana is already there. It says that CFATF will inform their members that Guyana is non-compliant and will invite their members to take such countermeasures to protect their economies and their businesses from the money laundering and terroristic risks that Guyana will expose them to.
The ministers, however, assured that government has done all it can within reasonable scope to prevent these unfortunate consequences from ensuing, and remains committed to finding a solution to this impasse so that Guyanese do not have to bear the consequence of this failed legislative action. During Cabinet's statutory meeting at the Office of the President on November 12, His Excellency President Donald Ramotar and ministers of government discussed several issues of national concern. The media was subsequently briefed on Cabinet's deliberations. The non-consent to the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism bill by the parliamentary opposition on November 7 is their latest blow towards the development of Guyana, head of the Presidential Secretariat Dr. Roger Luncheon told the media during his post-cabinet press briefing on November 13.
They have chosen to disregard the interests repeatedly expressed and displayed by the broadest possible cross-section of Guyanese.
Dr. Luncheon said that the actions by the opposition are hurting Guyana and the national interest, and that the opposition are prepared to destroy Guyana in an effort to remove the People's Progressive Party from office. In light of the recent attention being paid by the political opposition in Venezuela to Eterembang and the bordering Guyanese communities, Dr. Lanchan said that such interest has been noted and that the Joint Services ranks stationed there have been put on alert. Cabinet has also approved the creation and operationalization of a special organized crime unit, SOCU, that will be dedicated to the investigation of suspected financial transactions suggestive of money laundering and the financing of terrorism. The unit will be based at Ivleri under the supervision of the Commissioner of Police and will collaborate with the Financial Intelligence Unit.
Because our investigations into suspect financial transactions suggestive of money laundering and the financing of terrorism need to be elevated to a level that addresses norms and standards established by CFATF. We recognize the need to resort to support from bilateral and multilateral partners.
Dr. Lanchan also noted during the media briefing that careful scrutiny with regards to budget cuts in 2012 and 2013 would show no significant differences. He was at the time responding to the call by a Partnership for National Unity for Minister of Finance Dr. Ashni Singh to be cited for contempt regarding Financial Paper 1 of 2013 presented to the National Assembly.
I don't think that a careful scrutiny of our responses to budget cuts in 2012 and budget cuts in 2013 would show that there is any significant differences adopted by the administration.
The financial paper requested parliamentary approval for the sum of $3.384 billion and included provisions to the National Communications Network and the Government Information Agencies. Monies for the state agencies had been cut from the national budget in 2012 and 2013 and subsequently restored subject to a preliminary court ruling from the Chief Justice in 2012. Steps are being taken to have a final ruling on the matter. Dr. Lanchan also reported that Cabinet offered its no objection to 4 contracts totaling $716 million, 2 of which include the supply of medical supplies and drugs for the health sector. And with those features, we have come to the end of this edition of Weekly Digest. But before we go, here's a recap of the highlights. Security measures are in place for the festive season. New species of flora and fauna discovered in the Rupununi, and Region 5 school moves up in ranking. Please note that the Weekly Digest and other government information can be found on our website www.gina.gov.ui, or you can send us your comments and suggestions at gina@gina.gov.ui. Join us again next week as we highlight more of government's programs and policies which are enhancing the lives of Guyanese people. I'm Ursula Ramdale. Do have a safe week ahead. Goodbye.